we finally conquered the pause menu, as you saw there. We're going to go over the whole C# script for you. I'm going to show you my canvases, how I did the pause menu, how I have this event manager that helps me send those events. We're going to go through all of it for you. So let's check it out right now. As you saw in the beginning, mid-combat, shooting lasers, enemies coming at you, you're able to pause the menu, everything stops, even the music, and then you're able to get right back into the game after you resume the game as well. Now, of course, you could hit the main menu too. We're not doing that right now, but I will show you how I did that just to make it a little more full circle here. So what did we do first? Well, of course, we needed that pause button on the canvas, right? So you can see here, I'm gonna, in the bottom left, I'm gonna go to my UI canvas. You'll see we have a couple new things. So we have a HUD. Let me show you that here. We have a top right HUD, right? That's this pause button right here. And underneath that, we have the pause menu panel. Now, this is grayed out because we want it to be inactive when the game starts. So all you do is inspector in the top right corner, you just say, unpause or whatever that is to be inactive. Now, we also obviously have the crosshair. That's one thing that we're going to be using because we're shooting with this crosshair, right? So we need to be able to know when that crosshair is going to be used on the pause menu. Now, what else do we have here? If we scroll down past a lot of these items here, on the bottom left, we have a couple managers. Now, inside this manager folder, we have the event system, okay? And that event system is what can kind of decide in the UI what is going to be clicked or what event system is going to be used in general. So we have kind of the input system in two places, okay? We have it in, I'm gonna unlock the timeline here. We have the event system here, which will show on the right-hand side what event system or input system we use, and that's the input system actions. And then if we go scroll up on the left-hand side to the player rig as well, and we scroll down to the player ship, you'll see that we have the input system actions menu here too. And the default one is player. So there's player and there's UI. Now, what does that actually mean? Well, obviously the player needs to point and click and shoot. It needs to be able to move with WASD, maybe other arrow buttons. And where that's actually set up is if you click that player input system, it'll take you in the project where that is. You can see it highlighting there at the bottom. And we can open that right up so you can see what that looks like. Now, this is the player input system. Let me highlight it here. Now, most of this is probably set up by default. And what you'll see on the left-hand side is we have two different action maps, and we'll go over that in the C# script here shortly as well. But we have the player action map. Again, that's what the player's doing. They're clicking WASD, arrows, whatever. And we also have the UI. Now this is navigating, this is submitting, this is canceling, this is pointing. These need to be different, right? Because if the player is pointing and clicking, we don't want them pointing and hitting the UI. We do want some UI components like the pause button, but mainly we want the player's point and clicks to actually attack and use those. So you have these two systems here. And as I mentioned before, one of them is set up automatically to be the default system for the player. Okay, and that's on that player ship. You can see on the right-hand side, if we screw all over a little bit, that for the player input, which I just minimized, the default is that player map. So right when we get into the game, that's going to be the default that the player uses. Now, let's jump into the player script so that we can go through this line by line. What I want to show you before we get there is if I go over to my HUD in my UI canvas, you will see that I have this set up as far as a pause button here, which we're looking at directly. And within that UI canvas, we actually directly call a portion of our C# script, okay? So you'll need to set this up afterwards, after you get the script going. But in the bottom right there, you'll see that we have an OnClick event, okay? And what we have is the pause manager, which is that C# script put in here. All you do is you press this plus button here, and you can drag and drop that script right in there, which we already did. I can do it again here if I go over to scripts and I go over to my pause manager and I click on my pause button again. You'll see that I can just drag a script right into that new OnClick event, okay? Now that allows you to see all of those methods and classes within that script. As you can see here, we already did it here before, so it's not gonna let us do it again, I think. But we can go here and say, okay, what's inside of the pause manager? And you can see we have PauseGame, RunGame down here towards the bottom. which is hard to see up there. Anyhow, let's take a look at the script. I'll move this over a little bit so it's easier to see that menu. We can show that again here. So pause manager, toggle pause. We have the pause manager, which has load game, pause menu, load main menu. These are all inside of the script itself. So let's jump over to the script so we can walk through it and you can get a better idea of how to do this because it's actually pretty simple. Now, with the main problem that I was having, if you saw some of my shorts recently, is that I was using two input systems instead of that one system that had player and UI, and they were just completely conflicting with each other, which is no bueno. So let's take a look here. I'll show you exactly what we got going on. Now, this is the main menu. We're not going to look at that too much, although you can see here that all it does is load the next scene in order. And then, if they quit the game, it just says application.quit. So pretty simple there for the main menu. Let's go over, I don't even see the pause here. Let's open it up. I'll double click my pause manager. Okay, now we're in the pause manager. So obviously we need to import the Unity input system. We need to input the scene management so that we can go to the main menu if they choose to escape and go to the main menu, or hit pause and go to the main menu. So what are the most important things in here? We obviously need to reference what the pause menu panel is, because once they hit play, we need to say, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to show something. Okay. Now we need to know, what are they going to press with? Because right now I have the cursor disabled. So they need to press with the crosshair. Okay. So those are the two UI references. And then we have the gameplay input, which is basically the player input system that we just went over, okay? Now at the very beginning, paused is going to be false. You can't go into the game and pause it. So those are the first setup items. Now we have a few methods in here. We have awake, we have update, we have toggle pause, we have PauseGame, and then we have ResumeGame, and then LoadMainMenu, okay? So all of those make sense. They should make sense as you just read them. Now, when the game awakes, if there is a pause menu panel, we set it active to false. We already did that in the game itself, but this is just a check. Now, if pause is false, time scale should be normal. It should be 100%, meaning the time should not slow down. It should not go to 0, okay? And the audio listener pausing should be false. The music should be playing. The laser should be shooting, okay? Now, the cursor, which is the arrow cursor, should not be visible because we don't want to show kind of that UI arrow cursor. And then the lock state for the cursor is none, okay? Now, what do we do next? Every time we call a game update, that's obviously what this class is here. We say if the keyboard escape was pressed, then we need to toggle pause and pause the game. Okay, so I wanted two ways for them to pause it. They could hit escape really fast, or they could go to that pause button and hit pause in the top right. Now, you may ask, like, why don't I have the click pause in this one here? And that's because I showed you earlier, if we go back to Unity here, I showed you that in that actual object, if I go to the pause button, we had the pause manager here. Actually, I'm going to delete this last one we created. But we have in the inspector, in the bottom right, you can see we have this selected here to create a pause manager. Okay. This pause manager on click calls toggle pause. Okay, so we already did that in the UI. We don't need to do it in the code. And that's actually because the UI input system is not active. And so this is kind of a way to say, hey, I know the input system is not active. I still want to call that on pause event if the user does click this using this current input system. Okay, so a little bit strange, a little bit odd, but it's kind of a workaround instead of using the code every time to do it. So let's go back to the code here and take a look. Continue to walk through. Okay, so we got that toggle pause. Now, what does it mean to toggle the pause? Well, we have a debug here, obviously, because I was debugging it earlier. But if is paused, we resume the game. Otherwise, if the game isn't paused, we're going to pause the game. So just a simple check to say, do one or the other, depending on the current game state. Now, if the game is paused, true, we're going to do the pause game thing, right? Time scale, we're going to set to 0, which means nothing moves anymore. Don't let the spaceships, don't let the enemies move. The audio, the music and the lasers, turn those off, right? We want to pause those. And then we want to set that pause menu panel that we had inactive at first. We want to set that to true, to active. And the crosshair that we were currently using to shoot things, we want to set that to false, okay? Then we want to switch the player input to UI. Remember, there was player and there was UI. And now we're going to have a UI input system. The cursor is going to be visible and the lock state is going to be none. So what about ResumeGame? Okay, is paused equal false? That triggers, okay, we need to have time scale back to 1. We kind of just undo everything that we just did, right? Turn the audio back on, hide the pause menu panel, show the crosshair, right? Switch to the player input mode, and then make the cursor that was the original arrow cursor false, and cursor lock mode should not be locked. Now, what about load main menu? That's a lot easier. That's where we loaded that scene manager in at the very beginning. And all we do is say, okay, we want to pause the audio again, and timescale should still be 1 in case we have animations in the main menu. But then all it does is say, okay, go find main menu and load it. So that's really it. That's a pretty simple walkthrough of how this works. Of course, we can jump into the game and I'll show you what it looks like in game. I know you probably saw some of it already as that first intro played a little bit of it, but it's always fun to kind of see it a couple times here. Definitely ask questions in the comments below if you were confused about anything. Make sure you subscribe and like so that you can get more of this content where I walk through these C# Unity scripts and Unity itself that will help you. I don't want you to miss some of those. Got a lot of fun ones coming, especially when I work on this new game. So let's take a look here. You can see too, I'll go over briefly, the pause menu panel also has these buttons where on the right hand side there, you'll see that I have the pause menu and I have resume game set up to resume the game there. Same with the main menu button. Load main menu is the action that you're going to take on click. So I'm going to mute this because it's pretty loud, right? And I know the music is great, but here we go. So the game starts just like this. We can pause it at any time just by hitting escape. We can resume. We can go to main menu. Obviously, we can still shoot and move right now. If I go over to the pause button here and pause it, boom, resume game, main menu. Now you can still use escape. I like to use escape because it's a lot quicker. Maybe a lot of people do, right? So it goes back and forth. You can see the background pausing. Obviously the music and sound would be pausing as well. And we got to test main menu, right? So you click main menu, boom, you're at the main menu. You can start mission, you can exit. All of it works seamlessly, works as expected. So this was a fun experiment for me. I think clearly we need the pause menu. We need to be able to return to main menu. We need to be able to quit the game and go back to the main menu or just exit the game in general, especially if this is something that we are going to launch into Steam now that we have our Steam account and our page almost all but set up. So this is one of those next steps. There's still a few things I need to do. I want to make the encounters with the enemies a little bit better, especially towards the end of the game. I want to have a loadout of the game to kind of say thank you for playing my demo. But there's really only a few things that we need to wrap up. So make sure you subscribe for those few things. I'll teach you how to do some of those as well. This is super exciting, getting close to the end of this demo project. I'm really excited to work on something new. Let me know in the comments too if you have an idea for a game that you want me to work on. I do have some ideas. I am diving down the rabbit hole of design and ideas to make this next game really fun and exciting for you. But if there's something that you want to learn and I can incorporate in that in the new game, then let me know in the comments and I'll see if I can incorporate it. Until then, I will see you tomorrow.